Hello, this is Kathleen McKee of Oleens.com, Machine Embroidery Art.
We already went over the techniques of keyboard texting and monogram and all the thousands of options you have, not just with the different types of text, be it true type or built-in fonts, but also with our ability to edit and rotate and change the colors and all the other things and transform, all the things we can do with text. But there are going to be many times when you're going to come across a logo that you are not going to be able to find that font in your text program, or you're not going to be able to edit it to fit your graphic. There are three main types of text. There is your block text, your script text, and whenever you see these little anchors on the top or the bottom or the ends, that's called a serif text. When you choose your text from your text, it will tell you if it's a serif or a block, it'll tell, or a script. In this lesson, we're just going to be dealing with a block text. Now, block text are usually pretty easy to match up because either Arial or something similar to it is going to be able to match up with it almost exactly. So we'll try this true type Arial text. And because this looks like a pretty bold block text, let's go ahead and make this a bold Arial and say OK. And in all capitals, I'm going to type National, press Enter, and now we're going to try to match it up to fit. And that's almost it, but let's look at it in the stitch view. But we might need to add a little bit of pull compensation. Oh, I had already done that. Let's add a little more pull compensation to make it match up. And it's pretty close. That T is not spaced the same, but we can choose that little diamond and move it over a little bit. And it'll move all of them. And then that one, we need to choose that and move it a little bit that way. And so you can get it to match up almost exactly. So what's the advantage of hand digitizing a block text when it's so easy to do it on the keyboard? Well, the main reason is if you're sewing out 200 of these hats or whatever, you don't want your machine to stop and trim and jump and stop and trim and jump every time it goes to a new letter. So one of the main reasons I like to manually digitize letters is so that I can find out where the closest connection point is between any two letters and connect them there. So let's get close up and start to digitizing these letters manually. So we are going to do all of this through our Shapes manual punch tool. I'm going to start out with a straight block. And whenever I use a manual punch tool, I always like to start out with a running stitch so that the machine has a time to catch the stitch before it starts sewing, so that you don't have any unraveling. So that's going to be my first stitch. So as we had talked in previous lessons, that will be my top, so that when I go to my straight block, that's the bottom. Top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. And I see where this is the closest connecting point, so I'm going to change that to a running stitch at this point. Run it up to the top, click it once, go back to my straight, so the next one's going to be the bottom. Double click. So my next letter, let me get rid of this understitching so you can see how it is, how it looks easier. Okay, so for the next letter, go to our shapes, manual punch, and because this is less than 2 millimeters, I know it's not going to stop and trim, and to prove it, I will just show you. From here to here, that's a millimeter, so I don't have to worry about the machine stopping and trimming there. So I'm going to continue on without having to send out a running stitch first, and then I'm going to, actually I think I will send out a running stitch first, and I'll tell you why, because I want to take care of this little part here. And now I'll turn it to a straight, and that will be my bottom, top, bottom. Now I'll go back to a running stitch, go back here, go to my straight block, bottom, and I'm going to guess about right there, top, bottom. Oh, here's the closest spot between these two letters, so I'm going to have to go to here, send out another running. And since I want to end up on this side, I've got to start over here, straight block, bottom, double click. Let's see if we made the 2 millimeter connection point. Yeah, under 2 millimeters, so it's not going to stop and trim there. So now when I choose my manual punch tool, I don't have to start with a running stitch because it's less than 2 millimeters. Top, bottom. And this is why I say top, bottom, because I always want to know where I start. Or you could say first, second, whatever you want, whatever works for you. Oh, I can't do it that way either. I have to undo it. I do have to go to a running stitch, and I'll tell you why. Because we need to end on the bottom. So I'll go like this. I'll just send something out. There we go. Now I'm going to change it to a straight. That will be bottom, top, bottom. Now I'm going to send out another running and go back to the straight block. That will be my bottom. See, I wanted to be over here. So now when I go top, bottom, top, double click, I'm very close to this next eye. And so on and so on. This is within 2 millimeters, so I can go or first, second, whatever you want to say, and the closest is between there and there, so I need to stop, send out a running, go back to my straight block, and that way I'll end closest to the O. And of course with the O you're going to be using a curved. Now I do want to end up on the outside so that I will meet with the end. So I could start with a running stitch here just to get to the other side. Now I'll choose my curved tool, and that will be my bottom or second. Hold on, is that a curve? And you always know that you can right click to undo the last stitch that you have inputted. So when if you put in a stitch that you don't like, you just right click it and it undoes it. And so now I have to send out a running stitch again. And then go back to my curve. Actually, I could have started and switched it later. But this is one of the advantages of hand digitizing a block stitch. Now, when I get to this point, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. I've already digitized the end, so I'm going to select this end. I'm going to Control D, the letter D, for duplicate, and now I have another N. But the problem with this N is that there will be a jump, because remember I started on the bottom with this one. But luckily I started it with a running stitch. under our sewing order, we're going to select that running stitch, but it's not on the first one. It's right before. Here it is. Right click, select object. Now that it's selected, we'll go to our edit key, and we're going to move this down so that it is close to where we end it. And looky there, the little scissors disappeared. It's not going to stop, cut, and trim. And the same goes for the A. I mean, we don't want to reinvent the wheel there either. We already digitized it, right? So we have that with our finger on the control key. We press the letter D and it duplicates. You can also go under the home key and do duplicate also. I'm just so used to keyboarding, I like to pass those little tips on. And you see the little scissors there now, but as soon as because it's saying it's ending a stitch there, but when we put that A right next to it, those little scissor icons disappeared. And so look at the difference between when we hand digitize. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trims. Here there are no trims, and there won't be any trims. Oh, see, the A ended over there, so we might have to redo that A. But in other words, when you hand digitize block letters, the advantage of that is that you eliminate a lot of stops and trims.